The San Antonio Spurs spent nearly 2 decades as the gold standard of basketball. Championships, Hall of Famers, and playoff runs made it feel like their dominance would never end. But eventually, the dynasty collapsed. Stars retired, losses piled up, and for the first time in years, the Spurs looked completely lost. Yet somehow, just 6 years later, they're back in the Western Conference Finals. So how does San Antonio pull off one of the fastest rebuilds in NBA history? Well, our story begins back in 2019. 2019 marked the true end of the old Spurs dynasty. Kawhi Leonard was gone to Toronto, Tony Parker left for Charlotte, and Manu Ginobili had officially retired. Yet despite all of that, San Antonio still refused to rebuild. Behind DeMar DeRozan, the Spurs managed to grab the 7th seed and push the Denver Nuggets to a Game 7 in the first round, losing by just 4 points. Since they barely missed the lottery, the Spurs landed the 29th pick, where they drafted Keldon Johnson, a name that will become important later. That same offseason, they also extended DeJounte Murray, signaling a transition toward a younger era. But even then, with Greg Popovich still coaching, San Antonio was still trying to stay competitive. And unfortunately, reality hit fast. The Spurs struggled throughout the 2019-20 season, finishing 11th despite making the bubble. But with that disappointment came opportunity. For the first time in years, San Antonio had a real lottery pick, selecting Devin Vassell and quietly building a promising young core. The Spurs entered the following season surprisingly competitive, but by March it became clear the franchise was shifting directions. Marcus Aldridge and the Spurs mutually agreed to part ways, as the team prioritized developing younger talent over chasing short-term wins. San Antonio eventually finished 10th, but thanks to the newly introduced play-in tournament, they still had a chance to make the postseason. That opportunity ended quickly after a loss to the Grizzlies. Still, the offseason showed where the franchise was headed. The Spurs drafted Josh Primo, and more importantly, traded DeRozan, officially handing the franchise over to Murray. And Murray responded with a breakout year, averaging 21 points, 8 rebounds, and 9 assists while earning his first All-Star appearance. Even though the Spurs lost in the play-in once again, major development from players like Johnson and Vassell gave the organization hope. Then came the biggest move of all.
The San Antonio Spurs are trading all-star guard DeJounte Murray to the Atlanta Hawks.
San Antonio traded him to Atlanta for 4 first-round picks. Crazy, right? Fully committing to the rebuild. Because behind the scenes, they had their eyes on a prospect capable of changing the entire franchise forever. Nevertheless, the 2023 season made one thing clear. The Spurs were fully committed to tanking. They finished with the second worst record in the NBA at just 22 wins. But the year wasn't completely hopeless. Young players across the roster began showing real flashes of potential. But then, everything changed overnight. In one of the biggest moments in franchise history, the Spurs won the 2023 lottery and secured the #1 pick. Years of rebuilding had finally paid off, and with that pick came Victor Wembanyama, the prospect many believe could change the league forever. Furthermore, what looked like a minor offseason move at the time ended up being another piece of the puzzle, as the Spurs added Julian Champagnie in free agency. And just like that, with a young core forming around Wembanyama, San Antonio officially stepped into a new era. The 2023-24 season arrived, and Wemby immediately lived up to the hype, putting together a spectacular rookie campaign and ultimately winning Rookie of the Year. But despite his brilliance, the team still struggled, finishing with the 14th seed and landing the 4th overall pick, which they used to select Stephon Castle. That summer, the Spurs continued building around their timeline, trading for Harrison Barnes and signing Chris Paul to mentor the growing young core. The following season began with real optimism. For the first half of the year, the Spurs hovered over 500, a massive leap for a franchise that had been stuck near the bottom for years. Castle looked like one of the most polished rookies in the class, and Wemby earned his first All-Star selection. At the trade deadline, the Spurs made a bold move, acquiring De'Aaron Fox in a 3-team deal without giving up any major assets. But just as everything was clicking, disaster struck. Wembanyama was sidelined for the season with a deep vein thrombosis, and weeks later, Fox also went down with a season-ending surgery. Even so, the season wasn't without its positives. Castle still captured Rookie of the Year, and the Spurs climbed the lottery to land the 2nd pick, selecting Dylan Harper, a move that raised questions about roster overlap with their growing guard position. Many expected them to fall back into the lottery in 2026, but that couldn't have been farther from the truth. The Spurs opened the season 5-0, the best start in franchise history, instantly silencing concerns about fit. Players like Champagnie, Vassell, and Johnson fully embraced their roles, and the team quickly evolved into one of the league's biggest surprises. They stormed into the NBA Cup final after taking down contenders like the Thunder, and by season's end, San Antonio had climbed all the way to the 2nd seed in the West with 60 wins. Wembanyama took home Defensive Player of the Year as the first unanimous winner in history, and now the Spurs are back in the Western Conference Finals for the first time in 9 years. Not as underdogs, but as legitimate favorites. It's honestly crazy to see how fast San Antonio flipped their future around. Just a few seasons ago, they were fighting for lottery odds, and now they're competing for a trip to the finals. Let me know what you guys think. Is this the best rebuild in NBA history, or are we getting ahead of ourselves?